Okay, thanks for your attendance today, and a couple of you were in the earlier session. Hopefully it'll be a little cooler in here. So, some of you are in class with me now. I've been teaching the IT for Church Management class in the Masters of Church Management for 7 years. Uh-oh, don't be filming me now. And I developed that course, as I said, it was a one-of-a-kind course. You know, there's a lot going on, so it's kind of interesting. For me, personally challenging to see what's going on in churches, and churches are, you know, notoriously lagging, I guess, in some respects, but in other respects, there's a lot of good things going on. So, and of course, the issues about that Steve was talking about this morning of finding the right blend of technology and personal life, you know, he was talking about that is something that we're always struggling with. And we talk about in class a lot, you know, this finding the right balance. And I'm not here to tell you that technology is the answer to all your problems. Believe me, my students know I was a Latin and Greek teacher for a previous incarnation before I got a PhD in information systems. So now this stuff it changes every few months, so it's hard to keep up. And that's another reason I'm sweating up here, keeping up with the intellectual stuff. So, and I brought these to share with you, just as and it's funny that Steve was talking about it. Just for fun, we can do fun. Can we do fun things?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So you've seen me with these on. I wore them in class online the other day, but first class, and I'm doing a little research grant with Google, and basically it's an excuse for me to get some Google class. I'll admit it to you, we're a family here, right? But no, it was their research division for people with disabilities. So the whole grant that I wrote was about developing an app for Google Glass that would help people with dementia like navigate and pop-up alerts for their calendar and email and things like that, right? The heads-up display here. So I was out there in Mountain View for the conference on wearable computing in May this year. So it was the first one. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. And I have another student now that we're developing an app that will allow people with disabilities to we're testing it now to use the eye movement tracking to move a robotic arm. So, I mean, Steve was talking about some of that stuff. I don't necessarily agree that he was saying this morning. I mean, there are research about thought control, and you can basically say yes and no and up and down and manipulate a mouse and that. But that's, I think, a little further off. But the eye movement stuff, I mean, if I move my head up, it turns on, and the voice recognition has gotten much better. So I can turn them on here and say, okay, Glass. Get directions to the Villanova Church. Searching. I think it actually works through my smartphone. Which is not, I turned off, so. One more thing to remember, so it wouldn't ring in the middle of my talk. So, but that's the idea. So your smartphone is the hub for the wearable computing. And so I can go, okay, Glass, take a picture. Okay, well, there it is. And if I go to my Google Plus site, I can go share. Share. Okay, now it's going up to my Google Plus. Well, I'll delete it right after. So don't feel like, hey. All my students, I'll give it, you guys can try it out too. If it goes off, you tap the side to start, or you can look up and hold up, and then. And so, try them out. And a lot of my students were taking selfies just to show their friends or family. Yeah,
the stuff they're doing. Post it on class. How do I say it?
Just tap the side temple, And do you see it in the heads-up display?
I don't know.
You can adjust that, the little display there.
I see you actually. Now I see something below.
Uh-oh, that's the picture, maybe you took.
Oh, maybe it's the picture.
Yeah, here, let me do this. I can't do this for all of you, but you can move this Oculus piece again.
Oh, that might help.
Yeah. So anyway,
Thank you.
try them. Be forewarned, I have poison ivy. I don't think it's worked.
Thank
It
you.
occurred to me. I'm under treatment for poison ivy. So anyway, this is just a side thing. You know, I thought it'd be fun though, since to kind of tie into what Steve was saying about finding the right balance in technology. And it's church management software. It's kind of where it's more the back office. Most of you have it. How many of you already have church management software in place? Okay, PariSoft, QuickBooks,
Yeah.
PDS,
Yes.
Logos, Church Windows, others?
Others.
What's it called?
ACS, I'm sorry.
Oh, ACS, yeah, they're the #1 in terms of actual churches. They have 50,000 churches using ACS. So, hey, so this is a topic. It's not as, you know, dare I say, sexy as wearable computing, but this is thinking about what the future is going to look like. A lot of it involves the infrastructure behind the church. You know, so when I did the talk on analytics this morning, analytics wouldn't work if we didn't have access to central data in real time in a centralized database. So that's what we're talking about here. They're the nuts and bolts of behind the scenes that make our lives better, hopefully, right? So that's what we really want. What makes a good application? Think about it. What makes a good application in church or in your life in general? What do you guys use? I mean, think about it. I mentioned EasyPass this morning.
Yeah.
I love it.
Me too.
Yeah. Can you imagine not using it?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, right? Zip through, pay the toll, life is good, right? What are any other good ones? I pay all my bills online, yeah.
Yep, ATMs,
Yep,
build a sub at Wawa.
That's the
yeah.
best one ever.
Yeah, those QR codes have fallen out of favor a little bit.
I know, but I still use them.
You use them a
I
lot?
throw 'em around.
Yeah. Think about it. So, what defines an app? We talk about this in class a lot. It makes your life better, frees you up to do other things, like relate to people better. I will give an example. I'm sorry, I'm giving you all the same examples here of this morning. I had to go to the doctor go over, you know, my blood test. Nothing bad. It was all good. I just haven't been in years, and so I never have the time. I got the flu shot, but I went in. The nurse practitioner took me in, did all the basics, you know, questions, and filled out the form at the computer laptop. And then even gave me the flu shot. Doctor came in, reviewed my reports. I could ask him questions. It was the best interaction I've had with a doctor since I can remember. I mean, and then all the workflow, what we call workflow, was all set up. So workflow for a doctor visit would be the insurance, and then I got a little cream for my poison ivy, and that was all, yeah, and they had it, you know, all there. Press a button, go pick it up, 30 minutes later you can get it. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the kind of workflow behind a medical situation. And now, 3 years ago when I gave this talk to the first IT Summit, all the questions and issues centered around privacy and security. All right, think about it. You know. I think, are you worried about your online payment going astray? I tried to get my 86-year-old mother to do it too, and she said, no way, I can't do that. So there's a certain generational thing going on too, and because I love it. You know, I just used to take me, you know, an hour and a half to pay all those write-to checks and envelopes and stamps and stamp. And so now I can schedule them. As soon as they come in, I schedule it and forget about it. So that's, are you worried about that security?
Yes, she is, but that's because
Yeah.
she's a computer analyst, and so she's worried about it.
Oh, yeah, you're worried about it?
Well, I've always been taught that the program is no smarter than the person that wrote it, so we don't know.
Well, yeah, that's true, but there are a lot of people writing those programs, so there could be hundreds of
And
them.
there's firewalls.
None of them, yeah, there's firewalls, there's
Lots of
encryption.
those.
80% of the computer fraud comes from, don't say it,
Email?
no, in your organization. Is it hackers hacking into your systems? Or is it, you
I'm
can
just
say,
saying the people.
employees, yes, people, internal people, 80%. So again, the issues about what we were talking about with the cloud and cloud-based church management have kind of gone to the wayside a little bit. Yeah, so we're really going to talk about here, what is the problem we're talking about with church management software? What is it? And I always use the Bridgeport Diocese case study for their ParishSoft implementation. And I tried to call them and get an update on it because it's been a few years now, but I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And I looked online, I couldn't find it. So that, I guess that's a good sign. You know, there's no, if anyone has other information or news about your church management evolution. So I'll talk about the Wave 2. What is Wave 2 church management? We're already now in what I would call Wave 2 of church management. So I like to call it church management systems or CMS. You know, got confused because of content management systems. So that's why we use C, lowercase h, MS. Questions about? It's a long-winded introduction here. Now, teaching the IT for Church Management class has really opened my eyes to how complicated a church is. And a diocesan, you know, exponentially more complicated. So, I mean, think about what your church does, not just in terms of technology, but, I mean, what do you've got all these groups, you've got members. Oh, okay, thank you. Did you get a picture, Father?
Thank you.
Oh, somebody should take a picture of you and put it on your.
Thank you.
All right. So, think about what does your church do? You may have religious education schools. You may have cemeteries. You may have retirement homes. What am I missing here? You may have properties. Just managing. In Villanova, I'm always amazed. This place must have 90% classroom utilization as far as the buildings and the classes. You know, I've never been to a university where it's used so much of the time. Outside groups coming in, and Bartley, which has been redone, is totally updated. It's got all the classrooms are always booked, so you can't really find time. You know, so it's hard. So, how many of you have IT budgets? At least half of you. The rest are all volunteers? Yep. Okay, how many of you have an IT director? Maybe a third? Okay. Well, 10 years ago, there was no budget and no director. Okay, so, but that's an indicator of where your churches may be in terms of the spectrum. So, some of the most cutting edge, I have to admit, are some of the mega churches, you know, in terms of integrating their systems. So, what we're talking about here is, guess what? It's just getting more complicated. I couldn't resist. This is called the Blade Runner font. I couldn't resist. My wife said, well, you can blame her for it. So, what is church management software? I mean, when I say it's getting more complicated, you know, there's all these new devices and technologies. We're talking about sensors and networks and check-in systems. So all this are called add-ins now for your normal church management kind of core modules. So, church management software or systems is really one or more software modules. So it's useful to think in terms of the module, right? So what do you think in terms of module or data is the most important data for a parish? Census, yeah. Yep, census, member data, yeah, that's it. That's your gold nuggets, right? How good is your member data? Has it been updated? Do they purge the list regularly? Good. Does a committee or something go through it, or
It's run through our parish office.
parish office, individuals, or the whole office?
They're the parish secretary.
Okay. So there's one person in charge every year. They do it regular schedule or whatever. You have a process for it, right?
We do.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Do you have
We have a
issues?
process. Our biggest issue is really archiving members that have left the church or getting updates from members as their information changes.
That's a good point in a way. Archiving instead of deleting, right? Why
Yes,
do
we
you
don't
do that?
delete
Yeah. Why is that?
because you never know when you're going to want to pull that up or you want to get data on the number of members that have left the
Exactly.
church.
Yeah, that's valuable data. Yeah.
People come
And
back
people
also.
come back, I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
And-
they come back for their information.
But also, we can only update what we're told about.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
So-
nobody's system is good, I don't care
No,
who's in
no.
charge of it, because people tell you or
Right.
people don't.
It-
I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
You're
good as
right.
far as what we know, so, but it is paid attention to.
Right, right.
Okay, we discover things on our own, like, oh,
Well,
that person died.
and there's not a real
Yeah,
motivation
that's
to
true.
take people off. You're not, I mean, pastors aren't motivated to take them off the list, right? I don't know if that, so it's that alone is a big issue right there in terms of managing that. So that data about your membership is going to be shared by all the different modules in your church management software. So you think they've been around forever, and there have been a lot of shakeups lately in terms of church management vendors, software vendors. They kind of consolidated, and a bunch of them went out of business. Now a bunch have come back in just in the last 3 years because of the cloud basis. So instead of like re-engineering an old package to run in the cloud, they started, tabula rasa and did a whole new cloud-based from the get-go package. So there's some good ones out there. So hardware, software is certainly fallen. So this stuff now you can buy it for a license for some of these for like $250 a year. Now you may be limited in terms of the number of users, and then if you add modules, it gets more expensive. Then you start adding things like maintenance fees, training. These are all things you got to be aware of, and consulting for outside consultants to update your data and migrate it all into the system. So, all right, that's slide 20. I already just did it. So. All right, so think about in business we talk about silos, functional silos, which just means that a lot of our data is stuck in a spreadsheet, right? So if the church secretary updates a member list on her spreadsheet or his spreadsheet, then it's just there on that computer. Do you share? How do you share the update, the census? How do you guys share it? Yeah.
We use
Go ahead.
PDS software, which is ACS Technologies owns them, so.
Yep.
I mean, and we use the school office as well.
Oh, good.
And we share a database.
They're linked up?
Yes.
Yeah. That's good. That's huge. That's the
It is.
backbone infrastructure of all kinds of other applications. I saw a bolt-on I was looking at yesterday that if you have a church bookstore, it has a POS bolt-on that hooks into your VeriSoft software. Wow, that could be really useful, right? Because think about it, if you have 10% problem data and you've got 2,000 members in your parish, that's a lot of messing around you have to do correcting problems, and it happens with multiple applications. So maybe the 10% errors with your tax reports that you have to do every year for their donations, or 10% errors for your giving online, so think about it. It adds up. The devil's in the details, and this is where so it's my argument, I guess, is that it's worth it to take the time to implement and integrate these kind of shared processes across, but it's a complicated thing, and some people like quit in the middle, it's too much. Questions so far? So here are some of the most common modules. As I said, member tracking is the number one. So if you had to pick one module to start with, which is sometimes a way to get it through all your political obstacles in your church, right, is to go with the low-hanging fruit, Okay, we're gonna focus on member data and attendance. Now, attendance can be a touchy issue, and we were talking earlier about measuring engagement. How do you measure? That might be a more accurate measure of, instead of attendance, just whether they're there, you know. So, but, and then the next most popular certainly would be the accounting modules. And they've gotten much better, although they're pretty vanilla. So whether you're using QuickBooks or ParishSoft or ACS, you know, they're pretty much standard, similar report accounting packages. So, and by the way, most of them do integrate with QuickBooks. So, how many of you are using QuickBooks? Okay, now that was kind of at Bridgeport. They pushed QuickBooks out to the parish level, and then they used ParishSoft for consolidating all that. And it was 87 parishes. It's not a trivial thing. We're talking about exercise. So from an academic viewpoint, it's interesting just because it's such a rich problem. You know, I look at these as opportunities for me, but you guys have to suffer with all the consequences. So think about all the other things. You know, we have trained our minds to think, well, you just can't have small groups that share data with, you know, the diocese, or you can't have small groups that share data between themselves, or, you know, or we've trained ourselves to think that volunteer training has to be done manually, you know. So if we had a chance to re-engineer all our church processes with technology, and we keep doing it over and over, this is not the first time, then you have to re-engineer and rethink it like, wow, if I could do it all in the cloud, what does that mean? You know, we're learning this now, I'm asking it. So think about it. It's kind of a challenge, but it's a fun challenge too, because you can make your life better. Just like all those other apps we were talking about, right? So think about how many of you have gone through this process of re-engineering. Could be something like we're talking new visitors. Yeah, like what?
Well, we're on the diocesan staff.
Yeah.
We have approximately
A lot of Trenton people here, I love it.
Yeah. We have approximately 105 parishes in the Diocese of Trenton, and we implemented the server-based ParishSoft a few years ago.
Right.
And now, in November, we're moving our first group of 30 parishes, your parish being one of them,
Yeah.
To the cloud.
to the cloud. So,
Where it should be.
yes, exactly, which will infinitely help out in terms of synchronization of data and everything like that. But what we find is because we have 105 parishes,
Yeah.
we have 105 different ways of doing the same thing. And it becomes very difficult
Yeah.
to try to convince people who've done it this way forever to now do it this way, and I promise you'll get the same results, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a challenge for us more than anything else. You know, change is hard no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if it's fun, it's still difficult.
Well,
But I gotta tell you, I'm not having much fun.
Oh, okay. Well, that's right. You should get a PhD and you can just talk about these things. Yeah, it's a lot better than from my perspective. No, I'm with you in spirit for sure. But yeah, no, the human side is what the change management issues are
Right.
always the big one, because it's it's a control thing and it's a
But
habits.
I'll also tell you from
Yeah.
a diocesan perspective, I think that we also have to think about, because we in fact, when we moved to ParishSoft, said to our parishes, no longer purge people, keep them, for any number of reasons.
Oh,
You know what?
yeah.
I mean, my whole family grew up in St. Paul's in Princeton. None of us are there any longer. Guess what? If I become the next Bill Gates, St. Paul's wants to know I was there,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that sort of stuff. So, so I think that that's important. And we've had parishes who for years were deleting people when they were gone. So, I think at our, certainly at the parish level, they have to become accustomed to the change that exists because they're not all little individual parishes that are doing their own thing. But on the diocesan level, we too have to acknowledge the fact that they have in fact done different things and be willing to educate more the need for for
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, training
For
is
doing
like
things
the number one
differently.
reason these
Yeah.
things fail. You know, lack of, well, there's a number, yeah.
Bless you.
Not to be sarcastic, but sometimes it's a matter of people feel job security is a big thing. You're gonna take my job away ultimately. And some
Absolutely.
computer is
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to. And that's not the case at all. There's enough work in a church office to keep everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do think that's true. I think the other side of that too is the introduction of any database requires a whole lot of work in the beginning. And most of these
Yeah.
people aren't gonna reap the fruits of their labors. You know, when they put in, you know, the volume and the page number of a baptismal certificate that somebody's not gonna look at for 23 more years,
Yeah.
they're not gonna be there getting it out. So what happens is they think, well, you know what, I have a lot to do, why should I do that bit too? So I think there's some of that as well, you know, and rightly so, so.
In parishes, some of them are feel like they're going light years ahead, and others were already more advanced, and now they feel like they're going backwards.
Right, you're
So parishes that are very advanced technologically are now, because the diocese mandates it, have to go back to the 80s, so to
Yeah.
speak, to do their.
That's
It is
yeah.
a spectrum.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
Others,
Yes.
others are
From
still
cards
on
to-
cardboard
Right.
cards.
Yeah, no, that's
Don't even have a computer in the building.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I could say is we went from a, on-site server to the cloud. And it was a little painful in the beginning, but, once you get right-sized with the pipeline and,
Yeah,
they send us emails, we're doing an update this weekend, good, glad I don't have to be involved, thanks, bye. And I mean, my point is,
Yeah.
for IT, I'm not an expert, I know enough to be dangerous, I
Right.
managed to help desk for a long time, I know, guess what? Let's get back to our core competencies. It's not running an IT department. And, I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that's, and our diocese, Philadelphia's going through some things, and they're trying to get on top, get on a higher plane, stop this silo
Yeah.
stuff,
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a struggle, though, it is.
It
But
is.
you have to keep like a positive, like this.
Yes.
The goal, as you say, is to make our lives better for maybe not be us, but eventually whoever comes along is gonna depend. Yeah, Asha.
I come from a separate background because I'm Protestant. So we don't have a diocese. We don't have those huge people, groups that could really bring us through the technology. So in a lot of cases, it's the church on its own who's still doing things by hand.
Yeah.
And now you've got to pull them, kicking and screaming. I'm like, Mom, Reed, I know you don't want to text, but please, I have to send you this text message. I have to send you this email. I've been doing this since Moses walked the earth. And so to pull that it's
Yeah.
handwritten, our ledgers are still handwritten, and trying to get that membership data from, a United Methodist Church that was like the
Yeah.
first one in New Jersey, and I'm up in the coffers looking for stuff. That is painful. So by the time we get to the point where we have church management software, there's back work that we have to do to even implement it. So so it's just constant. Yeah, it's from the 1700s, and then there was a merger
Yeah.
of two churches. So by then, everybody's like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Can we start now? Can we
Yeah.
start now?
Pull them up
Yeah,
on the
you're
files
giving
up there in the
volunteers, right?
Yeah. Oh, managing volunteers.
Yeah,
That's what I can teach a
volunteers.
class on that.
I mean, you're from diocese of Trenton, we're from Freehold. With the merging two parishes, now you have the two parishes which have merged, and the person who was getting all the email information, they may not be there anymore, so their email drops off. So you have to go back scramble and, try to
Yeah.
find out, and if you haven't got a pastor that's computer friendly, I mean, they can shut you down. So, I mean, even that, as far as getting the communication lines between parishes, it's a nightmare.
It is.
But-
So I guess one question is
It
it
really
worth
is
all this trouble? I don't know. I guess it's still up for debate. I mean, if you do it right, and then you have to redo it again in a few years, I don't know. We've already done a server base. Some of you have done server base, now you're moving to cloud, but it should get easier each time you do it because you've been through a process of getting the basic like member data into the system. That is, but you kind of have to like buck up and do it. Yeah, unfortunately, if you want to move forward with this kind of technology. Now, it's not right for every situation. I don't think, I mean, it may not be worth it. And then it depends on the culture and as we said, the environment, the culture, the support. I'll talk about that more too. We get to it. I already talked. I could probably skip through everything here. So ACS actually has more than 50,000 churches. Fellowship One is a new purely cloud-based, and they're large. Rock Church has a little case online that I found about their San Diego Evangelical Church, mega church, 12,000 members, and then they've got 3 campuses now. They went from 2008 to 3 campuses, and now they're going to 6 campuses in another 2 years. And so their issues were about growing the system. And they were in the cloud from the get-go too, so they didn't have some of these server to cloud migration issues. So, and they're all young people, so they're all tech savvy, so they all want mobile and they all want, you know, their own portal into the software and forms, interactive forms. These are big things.
Question, who
Yeah.
would you consider to be ACS, their competitor?
ACS's competitor?
Or they're
all
kind of
of
up
these.
there by them?
In terms of numbers of users?
Have they been around the longest?
They had, I don't know, I think they've been, yeah, they were one of the early ones, yeah. ACS is, in terms of pure number, I know the next one down, I'm not sure, Power Church or Church Windows has 35,000. If you Google top 20 church management vendors, software vendors, you'll find the recent article showing. So I put Seraphim in there because they're local and they have a nice new cloud-based package they developed, but it runs on top of QuickBooks. They don't do any financials natively to their software. So that's another approach. As I said, it's kind of vanilla QuickBooks, and they have a mega church here in Coatesville that they developed the software for. Now they're selling it out more broadly. So, and some churches are just using QuickBooks. You know, if it's a standalone, it's not taken up to the diocesan level, or, you know, that. How big is your church, Audra?
Well, we merged 2 churches, and so I think the last time I looked at the membership rolls with the merger, it was about, on the rolls is 200. Now that's on the rolls,
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, that's a whole different conversation. So our district superintendent gave us our new numbers, and it was about 200 on the rolls.
Well, that might be a case where you would start small with, you know, just like the membership, and then computerize that and add the financials, et cetera, and that's not a big investment in cost, in software costs, but there are. But you can leapfrog everyone and jump into the cloud right away, you know, and really automate,
I'm just
re-engineer.
giving the information. I'm not touching the part
Yeah.
Bill.
Oh, okay, well. Other questions, other comments? Okay, this is the matrix I wanted to show you guys. There is this Steve Hewitt and his magazine, Christian Computing, have this exhaustive matrix. So you can see here, they wrote, wow. Okay, I guess not. How do I get you over to that? So I guess how long are you going to let me do that here? Let's see. You're just like my undergraduates. They will let me go on and on without, I'm like, talking about this thing on the screen. And okay, so here's the matrix that they developed. You can see some of the features. I won't go through all these, and you can't read it anyhow, but they have most of the main ones. Hosting, general services, supporting forms like Avery Forms, interactive form. That's a kind of a neat thing, especially with the calendar app, so you can embed a form in a calendar event, and then so that's kind of what we call the workflow part. It's how often you're shifting papers and permission slips and things like that. If you can automate that, that might improve somebody's life somewhere, you know. And it's not a big deal money-wise. Now you do need, you know, some techie people. Some of the, here's prints, color photo member directories, membership directories without photos, change of address module updates. dashboard, membership tracking, attendance tracking. Did anyone here track the skills of your membership? That's kind of a clever thing, right? Yeah, that, it's some of these simple things, the subtle things that really can make a difference, you know, in this kind of infrastructure application. So that's good. How do you guys track skills?
When they become new members, their
Yeah.
occupation. And so then we just have a field. That's the one thing that I do like about ACS is its flexibility in adding custom fields.
Okay.
And then we can run reports on it.
Yeah.
We
That's
get ours on an index card, somebody loses the index card or.
It's supposed to
Yeah.
go in the collection plate. It shouldn't get lost, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, little things like that, though, right? That can make a difference. What else? I won't go. There's a couple. There was things like French and Spanish, where you know you could go multilingual, which is a growing issue.
That's a pretty exhaustive list. Will this be available?
Yeah, I have it on the slide link here. So yeah, and Chuck told me that he wants everything posted on the. So they're filming this, and it's also with the slides. So yeah, this is an exhaustive list. Just as a helpful tip, I thought you might find it of use.
Because there are probably some features on there that we're not using that we should be using.
Yeah, like I mentioned, the church bookstore add-in, that is kind of cool. I love that idea, at least. I don't know how hard it is, but to have like POS linked into your financial data tracking database, right? So you've got revenue. Oh, think about all the different revenue streams that you've got, managing that, right? There are separate modules just for major gifts. What do we call them?
Contribution. Contribution.
Yeah,
Or
but
legacies.
Development?
Could be legacies.
yeah, well, I can't. I
Major
don't-
gifts, that covers it.
Yeah, okay,
Major
yeah.
gifts covers it, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're major.
Exactly.
They'll leave it there.
Yeah, bequests or yeah, bequests, and that's and they're always managing it properly and all that stuff. Capital campaign is another module in some of these too, so that you can get extra. But remember, you got to pay for some of these So, why would you want a church management software? Well, obviously we talked about some of these: improve visitor returns, get to know your families. I love the idea of engagement. That metric is something we haven't really employed in the analytics and reporting, which is tied to your church management software too. And again, your staff, you can free them up to do better things, right? That's the whole idea. So, and remember that the issues of transparency. If we can make people, trust the church better, they found in Bridgeport that donations went up 2.8%, and that was in 2008, 2009, which we all know what happened then. That was some of the worst. That was the worst economic year since the Depression, right? So,
And
yeah.
what was being linked to the, what was the impetus for the increase? Did they decide, did they determine?
Well, they decided, they thought it was because of the better transparency and reporting that
Okay.
members were getting
Okay.
about their donations.
Okay.
So they felt better knowing that, it wasn't being embezzled or sent to, Chuck
Better
Zach.
stewardship?
Yeah, stewardship was actually being done.
Yeah.
They probably believed it, but now they can see, you get a report, here's what you gave, here's what it was spent on,
Yes.
and it was done in a timely manner, so donations went up in a bad economy. So, and we were talking about some of this this is a complex issue. Change management, different cultures, past experience, and you may be dependent on one volunteer who's your IT guru. In Bridgeport, they happen to have some former Accenture consultants who took charge of it, right? So, you might structure it by getting one or two modules. Yeah.
As far as having one person in control of that, you should be careful, because if that person leaves, the church is stopped.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's another thing. Yeah, so it wouldn't be one person, but they kind of are taking the lead on it, yeah. So, And that is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but let me see the way. One of I'll talk about the critical success factors here in a second here. So, yeah, is the pastor going to use it? Are they going to be the only ones, or the church secretary? I think the church secretary is the real power of a church. They know what's going on, right? They're the ones that really, you talk to them. It's the same in our departments here in Villanova. So our secretary's been here for 45 years, I think. So, and she's like, you just ask Nancy, how do I get this done? She goes, talk to so-and-so at the development office. You know, it's like, oh gosh, I would never have known that, you know, so. And of course, what we do oftentimes is we look at current processes in place, and we can, some of them may already have been computerized in a standalone fashion, and they want to integrate them back into the new software, so you don't have to change everything, you know. So one church that I was talking to, they had come way back in the 80s, they had a check scanning application one of their members developed. So auto deposit, you know, scan checks, deposit them, and it was homemade, homegrown, it worked beautifully. They loved it, you know, and they'd patch it together, repatch it, and it worked. But so they didn't want to go with this online stuff, but they integrated it into the system so it still was used. So, and of course, yeah, we were talking about this. You have to define your goals, and for the new system, look at your core processes. As I said, start simple, and then you might have 2 or 3 aspirational features. You know, it's like the check-in or event management. Those are things that are, or POS links. Some of that stuff. Now, e-giving. How many of you are doing e-giving now? That's all. Yeah, that's like 2/3 here.
Well, we do it through PayPal.
Okay, well, same thing, yeah. PayPal, yeah. Some of them take more, some take less, but if you're doing that, I mean, there's no reason for that not to be happening now, and that can make a difference. Chuck did research on it. It's like getting an extra Sunday of giving, I mean, because you can count on it, too. People set it up, forget it, right? Okay, so there's no reason, that's a cheap one, that's an easy win. Think about easy wins, yes.
That is, and the other thing I'll add is last year, we actually benefited with all of the bad weather that we had.
Yeah.
Because people who set it up, they still contributed more so than the people who didn't come to church.
Exactly, yeah.
So in terms of trending, we were really able to see the benefit of it last year when we had all of that bad weather.
So it'd be worth it to move as many people to
Exactly.
PayPal as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's like a no-brainer, yeah. So that's a win, right? That's like finding money out there too. So, okay, I guess these are things for when you go and you're thinking about doing. But a lot of you have already done this. So, in terms of evaluating vendors, you know, getting your short list. But then the kind of key point here is to you have to get all the stakeholders involved. Like where you're saying you don't let that one person is not going to tell you what to do. Unless it's the diocese, I guess, but usually the way it works is there's stakeholders review all the major requirements that you want, and then you look at the vendors, you narrow it down, and so the stakeholder, who would the stakeholders be in your church for something like this?
Councils.
Councils? Yeah.
Staff.
Staff, yeah.
Trustees and deacons for us.
Yes, okay, yeah, different committees, like financial stewardship committees, all these, yeah, deacons. Yeah, so it's a big decision. You need and this helps you get buy-in, okay? So everyone should have some kind of say or input into this. They may not know what they're agreeing to, but, and it turns out, you know how most churches, you know, decide on a vendor? They see it in another church, and they say, this is what we want. They're using this, and now in wave 2, that's becoming the #1 reason why they change. Or the pastor, a new pastor comes in, I don't like that, I want this. I don't know ACS, I know Fellowship 1. So that's another hot reason that they change, you know, the whole package. Okay, I'm going to kind of got training I mentioned was the learning curve on these things is steep. So training is oftentimes one of the things that's dropped when the budget goes over, right? Which is unfortunate because then you don't want your software to become like what we call shelfware or vaporware, you know, because it's not used and you go back to the old ways of doing things, right? So the real power is in rethinking the processes and then integrating them in a better way in the cloud, right? Sharing information. So that, if you take the extra time to do that, then that's where the benefits come. And because we're trained not to think about that. Yes?
Oh, no, I was just.
We're trained not to think about integrating processes. I can give you 100 examples in the business world where, I mean, this has been a big win for business. I talked about healthcare, and as much as we malign healthcare in America, I think they're really getting it. Some of the technology is finally seeping in. I think, you know, churches are one of the last great areas for this kind of application. You have a question, Galina? Oh, okay. Yeah.
One comment, at lunch, one of the folks at our table said, you know, keeping it simple, okay? And that's some of the resistance, that it's too hard. And you were saying that when you went to the doctor, well, years ago, in my parish, an older gentleman said to me, he's got it all figured out. You remember Operation, the game?
Yeah, yeah.
He drew a stick man.
Yeah.
And everything that he ever had done, cataract, wrote the date, the doctor. And whenever he goes, I mean, this guy's like in his 90s now. He just updates this little stick man and hands it to them. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but guess what? It works. And you know, exactly. I mean, and you have to bring it down to the lowest common denominator.
No, you're right.
You're not going to get buy-in.
That's another reason I'm not sure that the internet learning, I mean, that Steve was saying this morning about learning, you know, the computers becoming God and all that stuff. I'm very skeptical of that. I mean, if it's going to learn from the internet, it's going to be, you know, learn everything about cute kittens and yeah. What else? You know, the internet runs at the 4th grade level at the highest, so for the most part. Anyway, one of the key things that jumped out at me is the idea of an API. Some of these vendors don't have their own API. Why is that important?
Integrate software.
Yes, when an API helps you integrate with other bolt-ons, what we call, or add-ins, right? If you have a special package for content management in your web social media campaign, right? You want to pull that in, or analytics, or a point of sale, you know, that is what we need an API for in computer lingo. So we already talked about pricing. They'll practically give it to you, but you have to watch out. Don't go for the cheapo because you're going to pay in the long run, right? This is a truism in the computer world. And then there's no training or documentation. The Upper Darby Police bought a system for tracking criminal records from a local guy, and it cost a lot of money. It was like, you know, $300,000, and he installed it. And then in 6 months it was not working. But he had moved. He left, you know, he was living in Alaska or something, and so they were stuck, and there was no documentation. So what did they do?
Well, another one.
Yes, right, another one. Yeah. So again, don't go for that cheap one because they're going to get you maintenance fees. Some you can buy all in one bundle of modules or buy the module. So be careful is all I'm saying. We already talked about this. I'm going to skip through this a little bit. Now, if you're consolidating churches, this is another issue like you were talking about. The data, it could be in different formats. That just complicates things a lot more too. I want to get to this because it's colorful and it shows you. This is from the business world. The research from the business world in integrated systems says that the #1 success factors are top management support, teamwork and composition. So you have this, like, all the stakeholders helping make the decision, and then project champion. These are always the top 3. So if the pastor is not on board, I have news for you. you're done for. It's not gonna, if they're not talking about it every meeting and say, oh, you should go to your, go to the files in PariSoft where we stored the minutes from the last, mentioning it, have a little buzz about it, everyone, showing that people are backing it. You have to get people behind it. This stuff doesn't work, yeah.
I just have one question, and maybe
Yeah.
it's not in this topic, but cloud, like we're on the cloud. What if
Yeah.
we want to go to a different cloud? Like, has anybody had any experience with trying to switch cloud providers, and what does it mean ultimately? Because guess what, the data's not here with me, it's with you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about what the story on that is, because everybody's so concerned about getting onto the cloud.
Yeah.
It can be rainy in the cloud sometimes. Yeah.
My gut reaction is, well, that shouldn't be a big deal, but now I'm thinking about actual practice. I'm not sure.
I have dumb terminals, okay?
Yeah.
Every time we get a new one, I don't own any of the software.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Wouldn't you be able to back your data up to something to?
They're backing it up for us, that's
No, but I
it.
mean, but they should be able to give you a file of all of your data.
I assume so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
That's what
Do
she's
you
trying to find out.
Do you maintain somewhere at the
No,
parish?
no, everything's in the cloud. It's gone. We don't have any on-site servers.
Well, I mean, in the cloud, it's stored in a format
I
that is
understand.
congenial to whatever
Right,
your
yep.
package is. So I don't think the cloud storage or provider will matter because,
Okay.
if you've got PariSoft in the cloud and they're using Access database or SQL Server, the cloud service provider is just a bucket where it's
A vehicle, right, and so you're moving it from here, it's like moving a house, you're taking the
Yeah.
contents out of one house and moving it to another house.
I hope so.
And so they should be able
I
to do that.
just don't know anybody that's moved
Yeah.
from cloud to
I
cloud.
don't either, to be honest.
Really, I mean, think about it,
It should be easier. If
Yeah.
You've got everybody, if you've gone through the hard, and we've
Yeah.
moved systems before, so if you've gone through the whole transition
yeah.
of moving unifying people in the first place, a
Yeah.
lot easier to take that unified package and find something better and move it.
Yeah, I hope so. It's just
Yeah.
that I,
Your name is?
well,
Yeah.
I'm just, because when we went from the server, which was a nightmare,
Yeah.
to the cloud,
Yeah.
I know someone who sells big systems for AT&T. I had them look at the proposal. They came back with 32 questions,
Yeah.
okay? And I put it right out there to the people who were making the decision, because I wasn't. Okay, I hope the people that made the decision read all the questions, because I already know what the answer should have been. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I haven't heard anybody jumping from one cloud to the other.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in like Amazon Web Services, and they have every different type of server possible with every operating system and everything.
Okay.
So,
Redundancy.
yeah, and multiple redundancies. So I think this shouldn't be an issue, but I'm a
You
little
hope-
hesitant to say.
Well, you
don't worry
hope
about it.
that all the IT companies
Yeah.
are following good practices,
Yeah.
okay?
Well, you get the standardized report, you get the certification reports that, once a year they're audited and they have to pass a
Yeah, yeah.
federal.
Okay, I'm just saying,
SOX
somebody can tell you that
compliance
you're on
and
the
all
cloud.
that.
That's just, due
People
diligence.
talk about clouds.
Yeah.
I'm a retired IT person, so I'm not too sure about all this new stuff.
Yeah.
What is the cloud and how does everybody get into this cloud?
Well, it's
If we
like.
die.
That's the way we know.
Who owns the cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I understand
It's an
what she's
off-site
saying.
server,
Somebody-
basically.
Yeah.
It's the highest
What
level.
is it? I mean,
You're handing your stuff over to somebody
to
else.
who?
The cloud, and you're hoping
Somewhere.
they take care of it.
And
A
who's-
server somewhere in China.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I happen to know.
We're taking everybody, all these
Yes,
things.
you're giving it to somebody else.
We're
Yes,
taking
yes,
their
you are.
information.
Yes.
And they're just relying on it to go to this cloud and it just sits
So
there.
do-
That's what you're
Is
saying.
that
What happened in my
Yeah,
it's
well,
just-
yeah, I mean, I
Somewhere,
just
somewhere
out there.
somewhere in the Costa Rica, China.
No, I mean, it's,
server.
But I can see
Due
people
diligence and get.
you said that 4 years ago, was it? How many years ago? Everybody's concerned about privacy and security, okay? Okay, I think
Who is
everybody's pretty
governing
cool
the
going to the cloud, but it's like anything else.
I understand what
You
she's
gotta
saying.
Yeah. it's-
Due
this is,
diligence, you
yeah,
gotta-
of course, due diligence, and it's, it's all new, so we're working through
I
it.
think in Trenton, we
Yeah.
in effect have our own personal cloud.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
got our own data centers that are redundant and move things back and forth, and we also have our policies and our processes are back up where we
Mhm.
move data to, but we are moving the entire system to another cloud, if you will. You know, again, I'll talk to the ParaSoft portion of that. We're moving that to the ParaSoft systems. We had to do our due diligence and ask all of those questions and get those reports and take a look at what they are doing. And to some degree, I guess it really is fake.
Yeah, there is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Do your homework.
It's
You can
also
only do
new,
so
right?
much.
It is new. I'm not gonna deny that. There are a lot of.
with this?
If you have an Android phone or an Apple phone, iPhone, all that data is kept on the cloud, either
Right,
by
and
Apple or Microsoft.
So
Cloud breaches.
Call it.
Well, that's the problem.
In
So
the
when you
last
think
couple
about-
months, you've heard on the news about people hacking into Target.
Yeah.
Yeah, Home Depot, yeah.
Yeah, Home Depot and all those, and every time you call them up, you get this, automated, we're sorry, this, that, and the other thing. What's to say, going along with your question, nobody's gonna tap into the cloud and get all of our personal information,
Well, 3 years ago, I advised
and our
every
financial.
parish not to put their financials in the cloud and their member data. But now I
Those-
think it's gotten to the point where
Those
it's,
dioceses with tithing parishes,
yeah.
I mean, they're just looking, I'm sure there's some hacker somewhere trying to figure out how to get hacked.
Well, yeah, it's not, nothing's 100%.
But I think that's just the cost of doing business too.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is
That's
we're
right.
moving in that direction.
Absolutely.
So as we roll on to things, I mean, Home Depot didn't look at the recent breach and go, oh, well, too bad. They
Yeah.
fixed it, and it'll keep moving that way. It's just what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
We can't stop it because,
Right, yeah.
just like you can't stop a kid walking across the street because he might get hurt.
Right.
He's gonna go.
But I'm just asking, are there certain precautions that they're taking in the cloud to watch that these things aren't happening?
And who's doing the
Yeah, but
precaution?
it's really no different than even when you're talking about paper records. Years ago,
Right.
churches had paper records, and then the parish office caught on fire because of electrical shortage,
Right.
and all those paper records caught on fire and disappeared. They were gone.
Right.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it's just on a bigger scale. That's all.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes, there
I heard
are.
of-
You knew where they burned, but they were still burned. You know?
Before you commit to any of these services, there are, you have to do your due diligence.
Yep,
You have to take a look at who it is and, how they have to answer all those, like you said, 23 questions or 30 or 123 questions.
32 or.
Those are, they're satisfactorily answered, and have your audit teams and things take a look at that.
Yeah, well, you're not alone, so that's any consolation.
Exactly.
Well, let me wrap up. I know we're running, it's time, so thanks for all this great interaction. I'm learning as much as you guys are, because it's all so new. I mean, no one person knows all this stuff. So, but I think in the future, obviously, this cloud trend is going to keep going. There's, as you said, this is something. There's a leap of faith a little bit, but think about it. I mean, like Father John was saying, the past is not better than this, so we're going to have some hiccups. It's pretty much guaranteed, but they're getting smaller too. Thinking about it, the breach, I mean,
Consider how much data is stored. The breaches are small.
yeah.
You took everyone
Exactly
stores
right.
that on the cloud.
I saw a commentator was talking about Ebola, and he said, well, 4,000 people have died from Ebola, right? It's a rough issue, and we know of. But 36,000 people in America will die from the flu this year. We don't think twice about that. It's not big. So you kind of get used to the new normal, whatever that is, with cloud computing and church management integration. So I still believe that the sum of the parts is greater than the individual, the individual parts when it comes to church software integration. So, anyway, thanks for great sharing. I appreciate it.